We have some metronome markings, but only a handful. And we don't know whether it was Joplin who put them on his rags or whether it was John Stark. Pineapple rag, which I played for you earlier, is marked quarter note equals 100, which is pretty fast for ragtime. And I tried to play it at about that tempo for you, give you an idea. When we teach ragtime, if we have a student who has enough chops, we can go into other details, such as the history, the kind of things that I'm trying to bring out a little bit today. The history of ragtime is a bit like a sociological study. In fact, there are a lot of questions which still remain unanswered. One of the biggest questions we have today is, for instance, why is the African American population just not interested? There's nobody here today who's African American. There probably won't be tonight. But we don't know. We know, of course, that 115 years ago, the social environment for black people in general, and certainly black musicians, was not very comfortable, and to say the least. Perhaps it's a time in their history that they don't really want to look at just yet. But there are some very, very rich stories. Do you know Cook studied with Dvorak? Will Marion Cook was a very virtuosic violinist, and he studied with Antonin Dvorak, the great Czech composer, when he came to America and taught at American University for a while. Cook went on to teach such people as Duke Ellington. They used to call him Pops Cook. Joplin's history is fascinating. His interest in education, first of all, and he wrote an opera called Treemonisha, and the main plot line is about getting rid of voodoo and superstition and turning to education to solve everybody's problems, that is, everybody in the African American community. And the heroine of this opera is a woman. This was written in 1915. It's pretty cool, huh? Well, in order to foster playing the ragtime, I decided I'd take the time and write a book that might better prepare a student who was studying piano for playing ragtime.
And what's it called, Glenn?
It's called Play Ragtime. And I've brought a few copies with me if anybody's interested. They're for sale. It starts off very, very elemental. The first thing we teach people about ragtime and the syncopation in it is the Cakewalk Rhythm, which goes like this. Mississippi Rag is an example of a cakewalk. So, what's a cakewalk? That if you were the best dancers, you got the cake. And if you've ever wondered at the origin of the phrase, well, that really takes the cake. That's what it's from. The cakewalk was not a dance that was set in stone. In fact, it was highly improvisatory. But there was a lot of, and this is the word, prancing involved, and kicking and body motions and so forth. And it wasn't necessarily a fast thing, but it had that singular rhythm, which comes from Latin America. So our cakewalk rhythm came to us from West Africa, processed through the Caribbean, and then up through the Gulf of Mexico, probably through New Orleans, and then up through the center part of the country, and then out to either coast. That's the first piece in this book. So you see it's very basic. And it enables people of almost any age to sit down and, if not play ragtime right away, study some of the elements of it. And later on, by the time you get to the end of the 23 pieces that are in there, you're playing almost full-fledged ragtime minus octaves. I decided I'd write it so that even small hands could play it. There's a little appendix to this book. There's a last section, and it's all about boom chick. And it's a series of exercises to train your left hand to play boom chick. And if you teach ragtime, I think this is the real approach that you have to do. If you find someone who's really seriously interested in it and can get them when they're young and they're just starting to learn how to play the piano, this is how to systematically go about doing it. If you want to know about degrees of difficulty in the ragtime literature, after you've gone through this book, you're ready to go there. Probably Tin Pan Alley and folk ragtime are the simplest forms of ragtime, and that's probably the best place to start. Even though you may want to play Maple Leaf Rag right off the bat, you probably should put it off just a little while. The easiest Joplin pieces, for instance, are things like, Peacherine Rag, which there's nothing unlovely about it. It's a gorgeous piece of music. But it is easier to play than many of the others. Or, for instance, Palm Leaf Rag, which I find it has its challenges, but it falls under the hand very neatly. And if you're an advanced intermediate, you could probably tackle it. The hardest Joplins? Well, I suppose everybody has a different perspective on this. Fig Leaf is one of them, definitely. Gladiolus is another. They always liken Gladiolus to Maple Leaf, but I think it's mainly because it's in A flat and the first strain has some of the similar harmonic moves, but there's nothing similar after that first strain. It's a beautiful, beautiful piece of music. Rose Leaf Rag, which I get into fights with people over it. It has a lot of counterpoint in it, which is difficult and challenging if you're just doing boom chick, in one melodic line. But Rose Leaf goes all over the place. But I keep saying, well, what are you going to do when you get to the fourth strain? It's a high kick, big time. It goes like this. Which means you got to play it. And so forth. So I think you have to listen to the music itself in your own ear, and usually there's a passage or a section of it that will tell you how fast or slow a piece of music is going to go. Stride probably is harder than Scott Joplin. Let me add a caveat. If you're used to playing in that style, and a lot of jazz musicians are, then it's maybe not so hard, because I've seen a lot of jazz musicians that have trouble playing in the Joplin style. There are a couple of things that have happened in recent years that have been very interesting. I say recent years, I mean in the last 30 or 40 years. Ragtime's become just popular enough so that it has become a genre in itself, and there are people who've decided it's worth spending their time to write some new ragtime. How about that? Well, the result is absolutely fascinating because it's all over the spectrum. It can contain elements of classic ragtime, blues, novelty, stride, you name it. It's all in there. Basically, what we've done now, in looking at the modern ragtime, is to divide them into two groups. It's most convenient to do so. One group is what we call nostalgic ragtime, and the other group is progressive or contemporary ragtime. Some of my stuff falls kind of in between the two. I'm going to try and play this tune. I haven't played this tune in public in about 25 years. No, Queen of Violets.
Don't hurt yourself.
Now, make sure that, I think the piano's doing better now, by the way.
I think it is, too.
Noticed that. Don't you think it's doing a lot better? Should we have a round of applause for the piano
Yes.
now?
Yes, it's gotten into the groove.
Yeah. Ragtime. Now we're
Okay, at least I got the music in front of me here. I don't know what possessed me to write a ragtime tune in the key of B, but I did. And as a result, nobody plays it.
I wonder why.
Most of ragtime are written in flat keys, and you say, why was that B? I mean, it's to accommodate bands. A lot of band instruments are B flat and E flat instruments, which makes it a lot easier for say a pickup group to play these tunes if they're in flat keys. So this is in the key of B, the Queen of Violets.
That was violence and not violence, right?
Violence.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're really wonderful to come here, and I think I've just about said what I wanted to say. But at this point, I want you to know, if you've got grandchildren that are studying piano right now, and piano is actually making a bit of a comeback, at least where I am, encourage them to look at this. It's fun to play. It's as much fun to play ragtime as it is to hear it. In fact, sometimes it's more fun. That's right. Yeah. And it's all across the whole spectrum. There's a ragtime tune out there that will suit just about anybody. I'll take questions. Anybody have any questions for me?
Not a single question.
Not a
Come
single
now. Thank
question.
you, Fred. Fred.
Yes.
What was your introduction to ragtime?
Good question. I was away at school, and Max Morath had a TV show at the time on public television. And where I was in Richmond, Indiana, at Earlham College, they weren't broadcasting his show. And my father, however, who was one of my inspirations as a kid, he plays the piano. He still plays the piano. He's 92. He saw Max's show and went out and bought some ragtime. And one time when I was home from school, I saw the ragtime music on his grand piano. And I saw it, and I said, whoa. At that point, the Joplin anthology hadn't even come out yet. But he had a book that I took possession of, and it's in 100 pieces now, and I don't know where all of it is. At any rate, I said, I got to learn how to do that. And then Josh Rifkin came on board with his stuff, and I turned on to his recording in 1971 before the movie The Sting came out, which blew the door wide open, of course, and that only reinforced my interest in it. Anybody else here? Yes, Chris.
When you write rags now, so many years after it was so popular, do you take inspiration from all these artists, or do you have in particulars that you really follow their forms or their chord structures, or what? When you sit down and write something, 70 years, 80 years after the fact, how do you get it to sound so authentic?
If you write a nostalgic rag, that's exactly what you're doing. You're following the format that was given to you back then. If you're writing progressive, and I use that word with caution because I'm not sure I like that word yet, but progressive ragtime, you can throw out any of the models that you want and do anything that the extreme would be to do atonal ragtime, and it's kind of silly. I'm in the middle ground. I'm still basically using harmonic progressions that people have used before, but I've got another couple of layers in there. I have an alto part and a tenor part that are moving along as well, and that comes from that's just the way I write. And so it depends is the short answer. Good question, though. We all have these wonderful models to look at. I mean, when you listen to Scott Joplin and James Scott and Joe Lamb, my gosh, I mean, what could be better than that? Well, thank you all very much for coming here today. It's been a real pleasure.